Shaquille O'Neal discovers hidden truth about his biological father in shocking interviewer. Are you ready to witness one of the most emotional revelations in sports history? Today, you're going to discover an incredible story about how a routine podcast interview completely changed everything Shaquille O'Neal thought he knew about his biological father. This is a story about lost letters, hidden truths, and how sometimes the narratives we build about our past aren't the complete picture. If this story moves you the way it should, please hit that like button right now. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications, because revelations like this remind us that there's always more to every story than we know. Now, let's dive into this life-changing moment that left even Shaq speechless. The Atlanta morning was crisp and clear as Shaquille O'Neal settled into the comfortable leather chair across from veteran sports journalist Marcus Thompson in the downtown podcast studio. It was supposed to be a routine interview for Real Talk Sports, a popular podcast where retired athletes discuss their careers, business ventures, and life lessons. Shaq had done hundreds of these interviews over the years. The questions were usually predictable: favorite NBA memories, business advice, thoughts on current players, maybe some family stories about his kids. He'd developed a comfortable rhythm with media appearances, balancing entertainment with genuine insight. "Shaq, thanks for being here today," Marcus said, adjusting his headphones as the sound engineer gave them the thumbs up. "I know you've got a busy schedule with all your business ventures." "Always happy to be here, Marcus. You know I love talking." "Ball and life," Shaq replied with his trademark smile, relaxing into what he expected to be another pleasant conversation. For the first 30 minutes, the interview proceeded exactly as expected. They discussed Shaq's latest business investments, his thoughts on the current NBA season, his work with various charities, and his experience as a television analyst. The conversation was engaging but routine, until Marcus shifted in his chair and pulled out a manila folder. "Shaq, I want to ask you about something different today," Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. "I've been working on a long-form piece about military families and how frequent moves affect children. During my research, I stumbled across something that I think you should know about." Shaq's eyebrows raised slightly. "Okay, shoot. What's up?" Marcus opened the folder and carefully removed several yellowed envelopes. These were found in a postal facility in Newark, New Jersey, during a renovation last year. They were in a section of unclaimed mail from the 1980s and early 90s. When the postal workers saw the name on them, they contacted me because they knew I was a sports journalist. Shaq leaned forward, his casual demeanor shifting to curiosity. "What name?" "Shaquille O'Neal." "All of these letters are addressed to you, Shaq. They're from Joseph Toney, your biological father, and they were never delivered." The studio fell completely silent except for the quiet hum of recording equipment. Shaq's massive frame went rigid, his eyes fixed on the letters Marcus was holding. For a moment, the man who was rarely at a loss for words couldn't speak. What?" Shaq finally managed, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus's expression was gentle but serious. "There are 17 letters here, Shaq. They span from 1985 to 1994. They were sent to various addresses where you lived during your childhood, but because your family moved so frequently with the military, they never reached me," Shaq finished, his eyes not leaving the envelopes. "That's right. The Postal Service tried to forward them, but with military families moving every couple of years, the forwarding addresses expired. These letters got caught in bureaucratic limbo and were eventually filed away as undeliverable." Shaq reached out with trembling hands to touch one of the letters. His name was written in careful block letters on the front, along with an address in San Antonio that he vaguely remembered from his childhood. The postmark was from 1987. He would have been 15 years old. "Marcus, I don't know what to say. Are you sure these are legitimate? I had them authenticated by 3 different handwriting experts and verified the postal marks. They're real, Shaq. And with your permission, I'd like to share what's in them. But more importantly, I wanted to give you the chance to read them yourself, on camera if you're comfortable, or privately if you prefer." Shaq stared at the letters, his mind racing. For over 30 years, he had carried the narrative that his biological father had simply abandoned him, had never tried to make contact, had never cared about his life or success. That narrative had shaped his relationship with his stepfather, Philip Harrison, whom he credited as his real father, and had influenced his determination to be present for his own children. "I need a minute," Shaq said, standing up from his chair and walking to the window overlooking the Atlanta skyline. The camera crew exchanged glances, unsure whether to keep filming. Marcus made a decision. "Cut the recording for now," he told the sound engineer. "Shaq, take all the time you need. This is your call entirely." For several minutes, Shaq stood at the window in silence. Marcus could see the conflict playing out in his body language, the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. This was a man confronting a fundamental shift in his understanding of his own life story. Finally, Shaq turned back to the interview setup. "I want to read them," he said quietly. "I want to read them now, with the cameras rolling. If there are people out there who have situations like mine, maybe this can help them understand that things aren't always what they seem. If you're already feeling the weight of this moment, please show your support by hitting that like button." What Shaquille discovers in these letters will completely change how he sees his past. Marcus nodded to the camera crew and they resumed recording. Shaq returned to his chair, but his entire demeanor had changed. The easy confidence he'd carried into the studio was replaced by a vulnerable uncertainty that viewers had rarely, if ever, seen from the basketball legend. "Okay," Shaq said, his voice steadier now but still thick with emotion. "Let's do this. Which one should I start with?" Marcus carefully arranged the letters chronologically. "This is the earliest one. It's postmarked March 15th, 1985. You would have been about 13 years old." Shaq accepted the envelope with shaking hands. The paper was yellowed with age, and he could see that it had been opened and resealed multiple times by postal workers attempting to deliver it. He carefully extracted the letter, unfolded it, and began to read aloud. "Dear Shaquille," he started, then paused, taking a deep breath. "I hope this letter finds you well and happy. I know I have no right to write to you after being gone for so long, but I think about you every single day. I heard from your grandmother that you're getting really tall and that you're playing basketball. I'm so proud of you, son." Shaq's voice cracked on the word son, and he had to stop reading for a moment to compose himself. "I want you to know that my not being there has nothing to do with you. You are a good boy, and you deserve so much better than what I've been able to give you. I've been sick, Shaquille. Sick in a way that makes it hard for me to be the father you need, but I'm trying to get better. I'm in a program now, and I'm working hard to become the man you can be proud of." Marcus watched as tears began forming in Shaq's eyes. "Do you want to stop?" "No," Shaq said firmly. "I need to hear this." He continued reading. "I know your mama found a good man in Philip, and I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that you have someone who can be there for you the way I can't right now. But I want you to know that just because I'm not there doesn't mean I don't love you. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the fish in the ocean. You are my heart, walking around outside my body." Shaq had to stop again, this time placing the letter on his lap and covering his face with his massive hands. The studio was completely silent except for the sound of his quiet crying. This changes everything," he whispered through his hands. "For 37 years, I thought he just didn't care. I thought he walked away and never looked back." Marcus leaned forward. "There are 16 more letters, Shaq. They span nearly a decade. Would you like me to read you excerpts from some of the others?" Shaq nodded, not trusting his voice to speak. Marcus picked up another letter. "This one is from 1989, right around the time you were graduating high school and heading to LSU." He began reading. "My dear son, I saw your picture in the newspaper today. You're going to college on a basketball scholarship. I am so incredibly proud of you. I wanted to be at your graduation, but I knew it wouldn't be right. This day belongs to you and the family that raised you right. But I want you to know that I was there in spirit, cheering louder than anyone." Marcus continued, "I've been clean for 2 years now, Shaquille. 2 years and 4 months, to be exact. Every day I don't use drugs is another day I get closer to being worthy of being your father. I know I may never get that chance, but I'm trying anyway. Because you deserve a father who is healthy and whole, even if that father can only love you from a distance." Shaq looked up at Marcus with red, swollen eyes. He was trying to get clean? He was getting help? According to these letters, yes. He writes about attending Narcotics Anonymous meetings, getting counseling, finding work. He talks about his struggles, but also his determination to become better. Marcus picked up another letter. This one is from 1992, during your sophomore year at LSU. "Dear Shaquille, I watched your game on television last night. You are magnificent, not just as a basketball player, but as a young man. I can see the character in how you play, how you treat your teammates, how you carry yourself. That character came from your mother and from Philip. They did what I couldn't do. They raised you right. The addiction counselor says, I need to accept that some of the damage I've done can't be undone. But he also says that loving someone sometimes means loving them from a distance, especially when your presence might cause more harm than good. So I love you from a distance, son, and I am so proud of the man you're becoming." Shaq was openly weeping now, but he gestured for Marcus to continue. "This last one I want to share is from 1994, right after you were drafted by the Orlando Magic." Marcus's voice grew softer as he read, "My son is going to play professional basketball. My son is going to live his dreams. I know I had nothing to do with your success, Shaquille, but being your father is still the greatest accomplishment of my life. I hope someday you might want to meet me, but if not, I understand. Just know that every good thing that happens to you makes me happy, and every day you exist in this world makes my life better, even from far away." The interview room fell silent. Shaq sat motionless, processing revelations that were reshaping everything he thought he knew about his biological father and his own story. After several minutes of silence, Shaq wiped his eyes and looked directly into the camera for the first time since the letters had been revealed. "I need to tell you all something," he said, his voice hoarse but determined. "For my entire adult life, I've told a story about my biological father. I've said in interviews, in my books, in documentaries, that he abandoned me and never tried to be part of my life. I said he was selfish, that he chose drugs over his family. that he never showed any interest in who I became. He paused, gathering his thoughts. And maybe some of that was true. But it wasn't the whole truth. And all these years, I've been angry at a man who was actually trying, in his own broken way, to be better. Marcus leaned forward. How does this change things for you, Shaq? It changes everything, Shaq replied immediately. You have to understand, the story I told myself about my father shaped how I approached my own life. It's why I was so determined to be present for my kids. It's why I worked so hard to prove that I wasn't like him. But he wasn't the villain. I thought he was. Shaq picked up one of the letters and held it carefully. This man was sick. He was addicted to drugs, yes, but he was also trying to get clean. He was trying to become someone worthy of being my father. And instead of making my life harder by forcing himself into it when he wasn't ready, he loved me enough to stay away. That's a very mature perspective, Marcus observed. It's taken me 51 years to get here, Shaq said with a sad smile. You know what hurts the most? Reading these letters, I can see that he knew me. He was watching from a distance, following my career, celebrating my successes. He knew what kind of man I was becoming, and he was proud of me. Shaq's voice grew stronger as he continued. All those years when I felt abandoned, when I felt like he didn't care whether I lived or died, he was actually there. Not physically, but emotionally. He was invested in my life in the only way he knew how to be. Marcus pulled out another letter. There's something else you should know. This letter is different from the others. It's from 1999, but it was never mailed. It was found with the others, but it's still sealed. Shaq's eyes widened. 1999? That was my first year with the Lakers. The envelope is addressed to UCare, of the Lakers front office, but for some reason, he never sent it. With trembling hands, Shaq accepted the unsealed envelope. Why do you think he didn't send it? I don't know. Maybe he was scared. Maybe he thought too much time had passed. Maybe he felt like he'd lost the right to reach out after so many years of silence. Shaq carefully opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. As he read it silently, his expression changed from curiosity to shock to deep, profound sadness. Marcus, he said quietly, this letter, it's different. It's not just about being proud of me or loving me from a distance. What does it say? Shaq's voice was barely a whisper. He's dying. He had liver cancer, and he was dying. He wrote this letter to say goodbye. The studio fell completely silent. He says he's sorry he never got to be the father I deserved. He says he hopes Philip knows how grateful he is for stepping in when he couldn't. He says he's not afraid to die because he got to see me become a man he could be proud of. Shaq looked up at Marcus with tears streaming down his face. He died, thinking I hated him. He died believing that I thought he was worthless, that he had never mattered to me, and I never got the chance to tell him that I would have forgiven him, that I would have understood. Marcus felt the weight of the moment. Shaq, you couldn't have known. The letters never reached you. But that's just it, Shaq said, his voice growing more passionate. Maybe they would have if I had tried harder to find him. Maybe if I hadn't been so angry, so convinced that he was just a deadbeat who didn't care, I would have looked for him. I would have reached out. He stood up and walked to the window again, the letter still in his hand. You know what this means? It means that for the last 24 years, I've been carrying anger toward a dead man who spent the last years of his life trying to make amends for mistakes he made when he was sick. Marcus watched Shaq struggle with this revelation. What are you feeling right now? Grateful, Shaq said, surprising himself with the answer. I'm grateful that I finally know the truth. I'm grateful that my father wasn't the man I thought he was. I'm grateful that he loved me, even when he couldn't show it properly. He turned back to the camera. But I'm also heartbroken. I'm heartbroken that he died alone, thinking his son hated him. I'm heartbroken that we never got to have one conversation as adults. I'm heartbroken that he never got to meet his grandchildren. Shaq returned to his chair, holding the final letter like a precious artifact. There's something I need to say to anyone watching this who might be in a similar situation. If you have a parent who's been absent, who's struggled with addiction, who's made mistakes that hurt you, don't wait. Don't assume you know the whole story. Don't let pride or anger keep you from seeking the truth. Marcus gave Shaq a few moments to collect himself before continuing. Shaq, I have to ask, are you angry that these letters were never delivered? Are you angry at the postal service? At the system that failed you both? Shaq considered the question carefully. You know, I should be angry. These letters could have changed my entire relationship with my biological father. They could have given us years to work things out, to build something together. But honestly, I'm not angry. Why not? Because being angry won't bring him back. And because maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. Shaq's voice grew more reflective. Maybe I needed to become the man I am today before I could read these letters and truly understand them. Maybe if I had gotten these letters when I was 15, or 20, or even 30, I wouldn't have been ready to see them for what they really are. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. What do you see when you look at them now? I see a man fighting the hardest battle of his life, Shaq replied without hesitation. I see someone who understood that love sometimes means sacrifice. I see a father who cared more about my well-being than his own desire to be in my life. Shaq picked up the first letter again, handling it with reverence. You know what struck me most about these letters? He never asked for anything. He never asked for money, never asked for tickets to games, never asked for forgiveness. He just wanted me to know that I was loved and that he was proud of me. That says a lot about his character. It does, and it makes me realize that I've spent my whole adult life trying to prove I wasn't like him, when maybe I should have been trying to understand him instead. Shaq's voice grew stronger. These letters show me a man who was capable of incredible selflessness, even in the middle of his own struggles. Marcus leaned forward. How do you think this will change your relationship with your stepfather, Philip Harrison? He's the man you've always credited as your real father. Shaq's face immediately softened. Oh, this doesn't change anything about my relationship with Philip. He's still my dad. He's still the man who raised me, who taught me discipline, who was there for every important moment of my childhood. Reading these letters doesn't diminish what Philip did for me. If anything, it makes me appreciate him even more. How so? Because now I understand that Philip didn't just choose to love me. He chose to love me knowing that my biological father was out there somewhere, possibly wanting to come back into my life. Philip raised me as his own son, not knowing if someday Joseph might show up and disrupt everything. That takes incredible courage and generosity. Shaq paused, clearly emotional. And reading these letters, I can see that Joseph understood that, too. He wasn't just grateful to Philip for being a good stepfather, he was grateful to him for being the father that Joseph couldn't be at that time in his life. Marcus pulled out his phone. Shaq, would you be open to us reaching out to any remaining family members of Joseph's? Maybe there are people who could tell you more about his final years. Actually, Shaq said, straightening up, I'd like to do that myself. I'd like to find out where he's buried. I'd like to visit his grave and finally have that conversation we never got to have. What would you say to him? Shaq was quiet for a long moment, staring at the letters spread across the table. I'd tell him that I forgive him. I'd tell him that I understand why he stayed away. I'd tell him that he was a good father in the only way he knew how to be at the time. His voice broke slightly. And I'd tell him that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that he carried the burden of thinking I hated him. I'm sorry that he died believing he was worthless to me. I'm sorry that we never got to meet as two grown men who could have understood each other. Marcus felt the profound weight of the moment. Is there anything you want to say to people who might be watching this and dealing with similar family situations? Shaq looked directly into the camera, his eyes clear and determined. Yes, I want to say that forgiveness isn't just about the other person. It's about freeing yourself from carrying anger that serves no purpose. I want to say that people are more complicated than the stories we tell about them. And sometimes, the people who hurt us are fighting battles we can't see. He picked up the stack of letters. Most importantly, I want to say that it's never too late to choose understanding over anger, compassion over resentment. My father is gone, but I can still choose to honor the love he tried to show me. I can still choose to let these letters heal wounds I didn't even know I was carrying. Shaq's voice grew stronger. And to anyone out there who has a parent struggling with addiction or mental illness or any other challenge that makes them hard to love, don't give up on them. Don't assume you know their whole story. Sometimes the people who seem like they don't care are actually caring so much that it's destroying them. The studio fell quiet again as the weight of Shaq's words settled over everyone present. Marcus looked at his notes, then set them aside. Shaq, thank you for sharing this with us. I know this wasn't easy. Thank you for finding these letters. Shaq replied, thank you for giving me the chance to finally understand my father. And thank you for helping me realize that the story I've been telling about my childhood wasn't complete. 3 weeks after the interview aired, Shaquille O'Neal stood in a small cemetery in Newark, New Jersey, holding a bouquet of white roses. After working with a private investigator, he had located Joseph Tony's grave, a simple headstone in a section of the cemetery reserved for people with limited means. The headstone read simply, Joseph Tony, 1952-1999, beloved son and father. Marcus Thompson stood a respectful distance away, along with a small camera crew. Shaq had asked them to document this moment, not for sensationalism, but because he wanted to show the world what healing looked like. Hi, Dad, Shaq said quietly, kneeling beside the grave despite his massive frame. I finally got your letters. He placed the roses on the headstone and sat back on his heels. I want you to know that I understand now. I understand why you stayed away. And I understand that it wasn't because you didn't love me. It was because you loved me too much to hurt me more than you already had. The wind rustled through the trees, and Shaq pulled the original letters from his jacket pocket. I brought these with me because I wanted to read them here, with you. I wanted you to know that your words reached me, even if they took 30 years to get here. He opened the first letter and read aloud. I love you more than all the stars in the sky, more than all the fish in the ocean. You are my heart, walking around outside my body. Shaq's voice was steady now, filled with peace rather than pain. You were wrong about one thing, though. You said you had nothing to do with my success, but that's not true. Your absence taught me how important it is to be present for the people you love. Your struggles taught me compassion for people fighting battles I can't see. Your letters taught me that love doesn't always look the way we expect it to." He stood up, towering over the small headstone. "I want you to know about your grandchildren. You have 6 of them, and they're incredible. They're kind, they're smart, they're funny. And I'm raising them to understand that family is complicated, that people make mistakes, but that love is always worth fighting for." Shaq paused, looking around the peaceful cemetery. "I also want you to know about Philip. He's still my dad, and he always will be. But now I understand that a child can have more than one father. You gave me life, and he raised me to live it well. You loved me from a distance, and he loved me up close. Both kinds of love mattered." Marcus approached quietly. "How are you feeling, Shaq?" "Peaceful," Shaq replied honestly. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I understand my whole story. Not just the part about the man who raised me, but the part about the man who gave me life and then loved me enough to let someone else raise me when he couldn't do it properly. Do you have any regrets?" Shaq considered the question. "I regret that we never got to have this conversation while he was alive. I regret that he died thinking I hated him. But I don't regret the way my life unfolded. If those letters had reached me when I was younger, my relationship with Philip might have been different. My approach to my own children might have been different. Everything might have been different." He looked back at the headstone. "I think maybe this is how it was supposed to happen. Maybe I needed to become the man I am today before I could read those letters and truly appreciate the love behind them." Marcus nodded. "What happens now?" "Now I go home to my family. And I love them a little better, because I understand love a little better," Shaq said. "I call Philip and thank him again for being exactly the father I needed when I needed him. And I tell my own children about their grandfather Joseph. Not the story I used to tell about the man who abandoned me, but the true story about the man who loved me so much he was willing to disappear so I could have a better life." Shaq knelt one more time beside the grave. "Thank you, Dad," he whispered. "Thank you for the letters, even though they took 30 years to reach me. Thank you for loving me the only way you knew how. And thank you for teaching me that sometimes the greatest gift a parent can give a child is the wisdom to know when to hold on and when to let go." As they walked back through the cemetery, Marcus asked one final question. "What do you want people to take away from this story?" Shaq stopped walking and turned to face the camera directly. "I want them to understand that every family story is more complicated than it appears from the outside. I want them to know that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's mistakes. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of carrying anger that serves no purpose." His voice grew more passionate. "Most importantly, I want people to understand that it's never too late to seek the truth, to choose compassion over judgment, to let love win over anger. My father has been gone for 24 years, but reading his letters still changed my life, still healed wounds I didn't even know I was carrying." Shaq looked back toward the cemetery one more time. Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to. Sometimes love looks like staying. Sometimes love looks like leaving. Sometimes love looks like 17 letters that take 30 years to reach their destination. But it's always love, and it's always worth recognizing when we finally see it clearly. 6 months later, Shaquille O'Neal established the Joseph Tony Foundation, dedicated to helping children of parents struggling with addiction maintain connections with their families while ensuring their safety and well-being. The foundation's motto, taken from one of Joseph's letters, reads, Love doesn't always look the way we expect it to, but it's always worth the wait. This incredible story reminds us that healing is possible at any stage of life, and that the truth has the power to set us free from narratives that no longer serve us. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of redemption and understanding, and share it with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to rewrite the story. You tell yourself about your past. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the willingness to see our story from a new perspective. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey, and remember, every family story is more beautiful and complicated than it appears on the surface.